They called him the philosopher emperor, but what they didn't tell you is that Marcus Aurelius practiced rituals so dark, so psychologically intense, that they would terrify most people today. Every morning before dawn, while Rome slept, the most powerful man in the ancient world performed mental exercises that would make modern therapy look like child's play. These weren't gentle meditations or positive affirmations. These were brutal confrontations with reality, systematic destruction of ego, and deliberate encounters with humanity's darkest truths. What I'm about to reveal will change how you see Stoicism forever. If you're ready to discover the forbidden psychological rituals that forged the strongest mind in history, hit that like button. Share this video with someone brave enough to face uncomfortable truths. Comment below which dark reality you've been avoiding, and subscribe to this channel for the dangerous wisdom they don't want you to know. Here's the truth they've hidden from you. Marcus Aurelius didn't become unshakable through positive thinking or self-help mantras. He built his mental fortress through what the Stoics called negative visualization, memento mori, and the discipline of death. But these weren't morbid obsessions. They were systematic methods for developing psychological invincibility. The man who ruled the known world understood that to conquer external enemies, you must first conquer the enemies within your own mind. Let me tell you what Marcus Aurelius did every morning that most people are too weak to attempt. He practiced what he called morning reflection. But this wasn't gratitude journaling. He systematically imagined losing everything he valued, his wife Faustina dying in his arms, his children succumbing to plague, his empire crumbling to dust, his own death coming today. Not once or twice, but methodically, viscerally, until these possibilities no longer held terror over him. In his private journal, which we now call Meditations, he wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." But to reach this acceptance, he had to stare directly into the abyss of impermanence until it no longer had power over him. This is the first dark ritual, the systematic destruction of attachment through negative visualization. Here's how this works and why it's so powerful it was kept secret. James, a successful CEO, discovered these practices during his company's near bankruptcy. While everyone else panicked about losing their lifestyle, their status, their security, James began each day by mentally rehearsing complete financial ruin. He imagined losing his house, his reputation, his relationships. But instead of creating anxiety, this ritual created something remarkable: absolute fearlessness in his business decisions. When you've already faced your worst fears in your mind, reality loses its ability to intimidate you. The second dark ritual Marcus Aurelius practiced was even more disturbing to modern sensibilities: the contemplation of human insignificance. Every night, he would mentally zoom out from his immediate concerns to the cosmic perspective. He wrote, "Remember that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But to reach this realization, he regularly contemplated the vastness of space, the brevity of human life, the meaninglessness of earthly achievements from the perspective of eternity. This wasn't depression or nihilism. This was liberation through cosmic humility. Sarah, a social media influencer obsessed with followers and engagement, discovered this practice during a severe anxiety episode. Instead of fighting her feelings of insignificance, she embraced them completely. She spent 20 minutes each morning contemplating the 13.8 billion year history of the universe, her microscopic place in it, the temporary nature of all human concerns. The result wasn't despair, it was profound peace. When you truly grasp your cosmic insignificance, the opinions of others, social status, and ego-driven achievements lose their power to disturb your tranquility. The third ritual was perhaps the darkest of all, what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of death. He didn't just think about dying, he practiced dying. Every night before sleep, he treated it as a rehearsal for his final night. He wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." But this insight came from regularly contemplating his own mortality, not as a distant possibility, but as an imminent reality. David, a middle-aged lawyer trapped in a career he hated, began practicing this ritual after reading the Meditations. Every evening, he lay in bed and imagined this was his last night alive. What regrets would he have? What would he wish he had done differently? What fears were keeping him from living authentically? After 6 months of this practice, he left his lucrative law career to become a teacher. Not because he wasn't afraid of the financial consequences, but because he had faced something far more terrifying, the possibility of dying with his dreams unrealized. But Marcus Aurelius took these practices even deeper into territory that would disturb most modern minds. He regularly contemplated the physical reality of death, not in abstract terms, but in brutal detail. He wrote about the decay of the body, the decomposition of flesh, the return to dust. This wasn't morbid fascination. It was systematic desensitization to the ultimate fear that controls most human behavior. Rachel, a perfectionist paralyzed by fear of failure, discovered this practice during therapy for anxiety disorder. Her therapist introduced her to Marcus Aurelius's writings on impermanence and physical decay. Instead of being horrified, Rachel found profound freedom in contemplating the temporary nature of all things, including her own body and achievements. When you truly accept that everything is temporary, including your failures and embarrassments, perfectionism becomes impossible to maintain. The fourth dark ritual involves what the Stoics called the view from above. But Marcus Aurelius practiced this with an intensity that borders on the supernatural. He would regularly imagine himself rising above his immediate circumstances, above Rome, above Earth itself, viewing human affairs from the perspective of the gods or the cosmos. From this vantage point, wars, politics, social drama, and personal conflicts appeared as they truly are, temporary disturbances in a vast, indifferent universe. Jake, a politician consumed by campaign stress, began practicing this visualization technique. Instead of being overwhelmed by poll numbers, media criticism, and opponent attacks, he started each day by mentally ascending above the entire political process. From cosmic perspective, elections were brief moments in human history. From this viewpoint, winning and losing became equally insignificant in the grand scheme of existence. This didn't make him careless. It made him fearless. He campaigned with complete dedication while maintaining perfect emotional detachment from outcomes. Here's the secret they don't want you to understand. These dark rituals weren't designed to make Marcus Aurelius depressed or nihilistic. They were systematic methods for building what psychologists now call emotional resilience and what the Stoics called ataraxia, unshakable inner peace. By regularly confronting the worst possibilities, contemplating cosmic insignificance, and rehearsing death, he became immune to the fears that paralyze most people. The fifth ritual was the most psychologically demanding, the systematic examination of his own moral failures. Marcus Aurelius didn't practice self-compassion or positive self-talk. Every night he conducted what he called evening review, a brutal self-assessment where he examined every decision, every reaction, every moment where he fell short of Stoic virtue. He wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." This wasn't self-flagellation or neurotic self-criticism. This was the disciplined pursuit of self-knowledge through radical honesty. Adam, a business executive struggling with anger management, adopted this practice. Instead of making excuses for his outbursts or blaming external circumstances, he spent 30 minutes each evening analyzing exactly what triggered his reactions, where his responses fell short of his values, and what he could do differently tomorrow. This systematic self-examination transformed him from a reactive leader to one of unshakable composure. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Marcus Aurelius' practice was his contemplation of human nature itself. He didn't idealize humanity or practice toxic positivity. He stared directly into the darkness of human behavior, the selfishness, the irrationality, the capacity for evil. Yet he wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it, the seething waters are laid to rest." This wasn't cynicism, it was prepared compassion. Olivia, a social worker dealing with daily exposure to human cruelty and suffering, found salvation in this approach. Instead of being shocked or disappointed by human behavior, she began each day by acknowledging the full spectrum of human nature. the capacity for both tremendous good and terrible evil. This preparation didn't make her hardened, it made her unshakeable. When you accept humanity as it is, rather than as you wish it were, you can serve others without being destroyed by their failures. The sixth dark ritual involved systematic poverty visualization. Marcus Aurelius regularly imagined losing all material possessions, living as a beggar, experiencing hunger, cold, and social rejection. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But this wisdom came from systematically stripping away every external source of happiness until only internal contentment remained. This practice reveals the forbidden truth about happiness that consumer culture desperately wants to hide. Genuine contentment comes from wanting less, not having more. When you can be happy with nothing, everything becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. When you can find peace in poverty, wealth becomes a tool rather than a master. When you can maintain dignity in disgrace, reputation becomes irrelevant to your self-worth. Marcus Aurelius understood that the mind is like a muscle. It must be challenged with increasingly difficult exercises to grow stronger. These dark rituals were his psychological gym, where he lifted the heaviest weights of human experience until his mental strength became legendary. While other rulers crumbled under pressure, lost their composure in crisis, or were destroyed by political setbacks, Marcus Aurelius remained unshakable because he had already faced far worse scenarios in his mind. The seventh and final ritual was perhaps the most profound, the practice of cosmic empathy. After contemplating his own insignificance and mortality, after facing human darkness and his own moral failures, Marcus Aurelius extended this same compassionate understanding to everyone around him. He wrote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This wasn't naive optimism, it was earned wisdom. When you truly understand that everyone is struggling with the same fundamental challenges, mortality, suffering, the search for meaning, anger becomes impossible, judgment becomes absurd, and compassion becomes natural. Not because people deserve it through their actions, but because we're all temporary beings doing our best in a difficult world. Here's what separates the strong from the weak. Most people run from these dark truths, seeking comfort in denial, distraction, or delusion. They want spirituality without shadow work, growth without discomfort, strength without training. But Marcus Aurelius understood that you cannot conquer what you will not confront. You cannot master what you refuse to examine. You cannot transcend what you're afraid to experience. These rituals aren't for everyone. They require courage to face reality without filters, strength to sit with discomfort, and wisdom to find peace in the midst of chaos. They demand that you look directly at everything you've been taught to avoid: death, meaninglessness, suffering, human cruelty, your own limitations. But for those brave enough to practice them, they offer something that no external achievement can provide: unshakable inner strength. The man who practiced these dark rituals became one of history's greatest leaders, not despite these contemplations, but because of them. When barbarians threatened Rome's borders, Marcus Aurelius didn't panic because he had already imagined the empire's fall. When plague ravaged the population, he didn't despair because he had accepted mortality completely. When political enemies attacked his character, he remained composed because he had already examined his own failures with brutal honesty. This is the forbidden path to psychological invincibility, not through positive thinking or self-deception, but through systematic confrontation with reality's darkest aspects. Not through avoiding difficulty, but through embracing it completely. Not through seeking comfort, but through finding peace in discomfort itself. The dark rituals of Marcus Aurelius weren't morbid obsessions. They were the forge in which unbreakable character is created. Your choice is simple. You can continue avoiding these uncomfortable truths, seeking happiness through external circumstances, remaining vulnerable to every setback and disappointment. Or you can follow the path of the philosopher-emperor, embracing the darkness to find the light, confronting your fears to discover your strength, accepting impermanence to find what is truly eternal within you. The rituals are waiting. The question is whether you're strong enough to practice them.